In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at something evil lurks beneath the floorboards. For our first story, we are heading over to Reddit, where a user posted, "I hear footsteps above me at night, but when I check, no one is there." They go on to say, "When I was 18, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with my then-girlfriend. It was cheap and the landlord allowed us to have a cat, which we desperately wanted. The building itself was kind of creepy. When you walked in the front door, you went straight into the living room. The end of the living room was an open doorway to the right that led to the kitchen. Down the hall to the left was the bathroom and one bedroom. At the end of the hall was another bedroom, which was our bedroom. That open doorway from the living room led to a set of stairs that went down to the basement. The apartment had been built in the early 1900s and all the walls were kind of crooked. All of this would not be important until one night. My girlfriend and I were laying in bed watching TV when we started hearing what sounded like footsteps above us. Obviously, we thought nothing of it since we live in an apartment building and thought maybe our upstairs neighbors were home for the night. We didn't think much of it. As the weeks passed, though, it happened again and again and again. My girlfriend and I could never get a good night's sleep anymore because we would always hear these exact same steps between 2 and 4 a.m. every night. One night we decided enough was enough. We got up, turned off the TV, and listened intently to the footsteps. They were definitely coming from above us, and they seemed to be coming from the empty apartment above us. This was especially odd because our upstairs neighbors had moved out about a month ago after their lease was up, and they hadn't even bothered to take their stuff with them. The apartment was completely empty. Well, whatever was up there, it kept doing the same thing every single night. So we made the decision to check it out. With the door propped open, we carefully crept closer to the sound and started shining a flashlight around the room. Everything looked normal except for the closet. We opened the closet door and shined the light inside. There was nothing there. We checked everywhere else and found nothing. Not wanting to disturb whatever was up there, we went back to bed. The next morning, we told our downstairs neighbor about the situation and asked if she had heard anything that night. She said that she hadn't heard anything, that she had her young kids with her most of the time, so she couldn't tell us for sure. I knew that whoever or whatever was making those noises wasn't there during the day, because it was completely silent during the day, but at night it was relentless. I tried everything to drown out the noise, but nothing worked. I slept with my phone under my pillow, blasting music through headphones, but I still heard the footsteps. Well, one night while my girlfriend and I were having dinner, we heard the footsteps yet again. We stopped eating, listened, and waited. We heard what sounded like heavy footsteps, followed by what sounded like a heavy object being dragged across the floor. We were terrified, so we called the cops. When the cops arrived, I explained everything to them. They were very skeptical, but agreed to check it out. They went upstairs into the empty apartment, but found nothing. They also agreed that it sounded like something heavy had been dragged across the floor. The officers suggested that we just ignore it, and that it was probably just some stray animal or something. Over the next few months, the footsteps continued. I ended up moving out because I couldn't take it anymore. To this day, I don't know what was making those footsteps, but I do know that it was terrifying. That was crazy. If I heard footsteps above me in the middle of the night, I'm getting out of that apartment quick. But this next story might make you think a little differently. Our next Reddit post is from another user who says, "I heard scratching sounds and then footsteps. My daughter and I were living in my parents' house while my husband was finishing up his degree. We had one small bedroom with 2 twin beds for her and I. We both worked from home, and so we were used to working with noise. One evening, we started hearing some scratching sounds above us. Figured it was my parents in the attic cleaning up, or maybe some raccoons. After a couple of minutes, the scratching stopped. Then we started hearing what sounded like footsteps. My daughter and I exchanged a panicked look. We knew that my parents kept a gun in the house, and we knew exactly where it was kept. After the footsteps had been going on for a few minutes, I got up, grabbed the gun, held it in my hand, and stood by my bedroom door listening. My daughter, who was 7 at the time, climbed into my bed and snuggled with me. Then we both started to hear what sounded like whispers. I'll never forget the chill that went down my spine when I heard them. Then a loud crash came from above us. My daughter and I looked at each other, frozen. After a minute or two, the scratching and footsteps started again. We decided to get out of the house. I unjammed the gun, and my daughter and I walked out of the house. Thankfully, my parents weren't home at the time, so we were able to let ourselves out. We walked around the block until the sounds in the house stopped. When we returned home, I stuck the gun in the same place I found it and went to bed. In the morning, I told my husband what happened, and he laughed. He told me that sometimes the house creaks, and it must have been the wind. I still have nightmares about that sound to this day. I love that last line. What is up with houses? They always do stuff like that just to mess with you. I mean, come on. But this next story might be one of the worst cases of floorboard hell. Our next Reddit post is from another user who says, "This happened about 6 years ago. I was in the second year of a 3-year university course in the UK studying theater. A friend and I were sharing a house with 3 others, 2 girls and a guy. Our house was old and drafty and squeaked a lot. None of the floorboards were particularly loose, but they did all make regular groaning sounds, which was fine. At around 4:30 a.m., I was awoken in my room by what sounded like someone dragging themselves across the floorboards directly above me. At first I assumed it was one of my flatmates, as I knew they often got up late at night to go to parties or something. I went to my window and leaned out to call down to them to keep it down, only to find myself staring into the night sky above me. I went to my roof. No lights were on in any of the neighboring houses. Everyone was asleep. As I came back into the room, I noticed a draft. I shut the window and went back to bed. My friend and I joked about how weird it was, and we fell back asleep. The next morning, none of the others were in the kitchen when I got up, so I didn't mention it to them. But that night, it happened again. Me and my friend were woken up at 4:30 a.m. by the same sound. I went to check again, and it was still dark outside. Again, no one was in the house. It continued to happen every night, and I was beginning to get scared. I stopped sleeping during the day and began to feel exhausted. One night it happened, and I managed to catch the figure on camera. I ran into the kitchen and grabbed the wooden spoon that we used to use to defend ourselves against burglars and stood in the doorway filming. I caught the figure on film dragging itself across the floor. It looks like a man dragging himself closer and closer to my room. My friend and I were terrified. We called the police and showed them the footage, and they said they'd look into it. However, they never came back to us. A week later, we'd had enough. We packed our things and left the house without paying rent or saying goodbye to anyone. When I moved out, I took the footage with me. I wish I could upload it here. But to describe what I saw, it looked like a naked man dragging himself across the floorboards. His skin was gray and leathery, and he had no face. I hope wherever he is, he finds peace. Holy crap, that was scary. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribe. What are your thoughts on these stories? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, I will see you next time.